Welcome on in, everyone. Welcome to our live stream for round 3 of PGA. We also got round 2 of LIV to talk about for today. We're going to go over everything you need to know to get ready for DFS and props for today. So first off, welcome to the live stream, whoever you guys are, whatever you're doing over here on this Saturday morning. I've got my coffee. I'm still waking up. We've got my cat just chilling to the side right here. So probably going to make a few little guest appearances on the stream, I guess. But they're needy. I left them for the day yesterday while I was out there on the golf course. So they're going to stick around while we're doing this live stream. So sorry if there's a little bit of commotion behind me, but we're going to get you guys ready for today. And first off, welcome on in. We have Metro down there, Why I Win, Kevin Buckley. Didn't have the best classic week, I guess, Kevin, but looking for Showdown. That's what we're here for, right? I have a lot more hope for my classic stuff, but hey, we'll get you ready for Showdown if you're not. What's going on, Blake? Big deal had Patrick Rogers. So yeah, withdrawal is not going to help you. So we got you for Showdown. What's going on? Why I Win and that hurt. Yeah, you played a lot of guys with locks this week. Why I Win. You're a crazy guy. 90% of your lineups had one guy miss the cut. That's a pretty normal thing to have happen, right? 5 of 6s are some of the more likely outcomes that you get. I had a 30% 6 of 6 rate. So obviously the average for the field was like 15, 20%. So it's not like we're triple or 10 times the field like we could be, but I do have about like 30% of them. So yeah, I didn't play Banan's shitty ass this week, that's for sure. So it looks like a lot of you guys got burned there. My main piece of exposure that got me, I'm honestly going to have to look at the leaderboard. There weren't that many guys I had that missed the cut badly. Trying to think off the top of my head. Let's just take a look at the leaderboard. I know there were a few that missed by just like a few spots. So let's take a look. There's always a few, right? Especially when you won 50 max like me. There's always going to be a few guys that just screw you. Eric Cole was one. I remember that one. Eric Cole I had in a bunch of my lineups. That one was not great. Who else? I faded a lot of the chocolate missed the cut. Like, so I faded, for example, Billy Ho missed the cut. Guys like a Harris English who ended up missing the weekend. Who else? I ended up fading Benny Ann, who ended up missing the weekend. So that was pretty nice. I took Tom Kim, right? So Tom Kim, of course, right? One of the lower end guys that we took, and he shot +7. So he was one of my stinkers, probably my main stinker, I would say, for a lot of my lineups. Outside of that, I don't even know how many guys I had that missed the cut. I'm actually going through these guys right now, and I didn't play very many of them. Probably why I have nearly 40% 6 of 6. So there are a few stinkers. There were a few higher owned guys that shot +4, +5. That's interesting. And they didn't miss the cut by much. Like Eric Van Rooyen, for example, right? Shot +2, missed the cut by 1 shot. If he makes the cut, that 6 of 6 percentage probably goes to like 20, 25%. So I'm kind of glad that some of the chalky guys missed the cut by a stroke or two, or else my 40% 6 of 6 or whatever it is, I actually didn't count it last night. I know it's close to like 40%. Wouldn't have meant all that much if everyone had that. So, okay, that's good to see. What else do we have going on down there? The cat is awesome. It's a fat ass cat. Just I guess bring her back up here. Look, she's an absolute unit. So I'm a unit. My cat's a unit. Not really that much of a surprise. Someone is going to slow down Batia. Just wish you knew who it was. I think he's going to do a lot of that himself. I think he's probably going to shit the bed a little bit. He had a hell of a run last year. This year, you can't catch a break. That is gambling for you, that's for sure. What's going on, Jim? Michael down there, thank you for the content, of course. Batia might just keep playing how he is. Probably not. I highly doubt that he's going to be 22 under par after 4 rounds. So I doubt it. What's going on, Layla? Listen to this golf genius. Well, I think that's a very kind word there. Not a genius, but try to do our best, right? Bring you guys some content. Thank you so much, Layla. What's going on, Blake? Yours was Tom Kim. Yeah, that was me. EVR got you. I could totally see how that would happen. How am I doing today? I'm sleepy. I had a really bad migraine last night. I wanted to do the live stream for you guys, but I just couldn't do it. I had way too much of a headache. English, gotcha. Yeah, I could see that. Big R Colts fan with the cut going to +1 and Norn getting in. How do I feel about him in Showdown? So I like him as a pivot. So he's like sub 10% owned in some of my projections that we'll get to. So I like that. So took down a 20 max. Okay, so you did better than I did for Showdown. Obviously, our weather edge, let's just talk about that to start because the weather edge went nutty yesterday. Now, we did not expect this, right? I played all AM guys because I thought we might get a half a stroke to a stroke advantage, right? I did not expect to see a 1.6 shot difference, right? Nearly a 1.7 shot difference between the two waves. Wind obviously kicked up a little bit more, right, than what the weathermen were calling for. And because we only took the AM guys, we got about the biggest edge that you could possibly have, right? We don't see over a stroke advantage very often. We don't see over a stroke and a half advantage hardly ever, right, out there on the PGA Tour. And that would be for a main slate, right, for a full 2-day sample. We got a 1.6 shot advantage just out there for Friday. So that was pretty sweet, along with the 0.4 shots they got out there for Thursday. Didn't hurt, right? When we went out there and built our main slate lineups, we took a lot of those PM AM guys, but for Showdown, it worked out nicely too. So good stuff, Kep. You did even better than I did. I did not have a takedown, but we did profit at the very least. What's going on, Jake? You wish Norn would have missed, but now he's fire for the weekend. Yeah, exactly. I wish he missed the cut too. He was one of those guys I faded, right? Norn, Billy Ho, English, all those overpriced guys that were coming in with good form. Like, good form matters, right? When you're talking about an under-owned, overlooked play. But when it's Alex Norn, it's Billy Ho that are $9,000, I'm totally there with you. But Tia moonwalking, yeah, I can't see him shooting -22. That's for damn sure. Hope Batia keeps it up. You have him at 55-1. That'd be pretty sweet, right? I've been betting him a lot this year. I don't have an outright this week, but I'll just give you a little sense of realism here. He's not shooting -22 and winning by 10. He's gonna come back to the field. It happens every single time that we get one of these guys. Now, still might win, right? He's got what, a 5-6 shot advantage. He's got a huge lead at this stage, but I'm not so sure about that. Good luck from Kentucky, as usual, for Showdown in the weekend. And go Aaron Baddeley. I know you're a huge fan there, Mondo. Hopefully he has a solid day. Eric says, sub to your Patreon on Thursday and tripled your money on Friday. Well, that probably paid for your subscription. So cheers to you out there, Eric. That's pretty solid. And then you faded all the same. Yeah, you have a very aggressive strategy why I win, which I love, right? You fade all the same guys I do, which I love it that you ride with your boy here, but you also lock a lot of players, which is, you're an absolute madman. You'd probably be a lot of fun to play like blackjack with, or craps or baccarat or something like that, because I'm sure you've got all the crazy strategies. But let's talk about what we're going to get for Saturday, which we're getting threesomes off of both tees. So if you haven't already seen the tee time setup, haven't already seen the PGA Tour tweet about all of that, we had like 82 people make the cut. So because of that, you're going to have threesomes off of both tees, which makes any sort of weather advantage that we're looking at minimized, right? These guys are going off in like a 2.5-hour window. They're pretty much all going to be on the course at the same time. Now, maybe like an 1.5-hour, 2-hour advantage that you could find if you saw anything here with the weather. But because conditions look pretty consistent for the entire day, I doubt we're going to get that kind of advantage. So you can see here, right, sustained winds are pretty gnarly for the entire day, between 12 to 15, 16 miles an hour. And then your wind gusts, now I don't really think they're probably going to be 30, right? They're probably going to be a little bit lower than this projection over here, but they're pretty gnarly themselves, right? 25 to 30 miles an hour of wind gusts, which is pretty consistent with what we got yesterday afternoon. So if we take a look at the scoring averages here, right, it played well over par in the PM. Now that we have some of the lower tier players cut out, right, some of your guys that aren't as consistent, right, didn't make the weekend, this is going to improve, but I do think we're going to see a harder scoring average than what we saw for yesterday morning. So moving day pins, tee boxes are going to have a lot to say with how today plays. Pin locations in general, which we'll go through in full detail towards the prop section of this live stream, are moving day pins, right? You've got quite a few backstops. You've got quite a few easier pin locations on the par fives. And then 17, you've had I didn't hear yesterday because I was on the LIV golf course yesterday. So I have to say, right, a lot of the broadcast I wasn't able to see for yesterday. Hole number 17 is supposed to be moved up. So I'm assuming on the broadcast that they talked about that a little bit out there on Friday, but 17 was moved up for rounds 3 and 4 last year. Year before that was also moved up for rounds 3 and 4. So I would be pretty surprised if 17 played to its full length today. So you're going to have that shortened. You have holes. Let's find a few of them. Like hole 2 is a real easy pin location for that par 5. 14 is the shortest par 5 on property. It's going to play even shorter with that front pin location. So we'll probably see a few eagles out there at hole number 14. And then hole 8 is your other par 5 location. 8 and 18, right? 8 a back right pin, 18 also a back right pin. So you have a few easier ones like 2, 14, 17, right? We're going to see a lot of birdies for today. But then you have holes like 8 that's up on a shelf. Hole 18 is tucked way there in the back near the bunker, which is probably by far the hardest pin that you can get at that green complex. There's just a good mix of moving day pins here. So for a birdie average, I think it's going to improve a little bit on what we saw for round 2. It's probably going to be pretty similar to what we had for round 1. But your bogey average, I don't think is going to improve very much. The windy conditions are going to lead to a lot of mistakes, right? A lot of those mistakes are going to be exacerbated because of all the wind out there. It's going to add spin to your golf ball. And then when you have a lot of these tucked pin locations, like 10 is no easy pin location, right? It's no rollover out there. 4 is already a long hole to begin with. It's like 500 yards. That's a back pin location. 5 is a shorter hole, but that's a tucked pin location. 7 is just over the bunker on the left side. So that's going to be a little bit tricky out there. 8, we already talked about, right? It's a pretty tricky pin location. 11 is a pretty tricky pin location too. 15, 16 is even a little bit hard right over there on the back left. There are enough difficult pin locations out there that I don't think this is going to be an absolute pushover. It's worth noting that for round 2, right in the morning, it did only play about 0.37 shots over par. A lot of that was pin locations, right? For round 2, they gave these guys a lot of soft pins, especially out there on the front 9, and it still played slightly over par. So a lot of times people will look at these moving day pins, especially for props, and maybe overreact a little bit. I don't see that much of an impact on play, right? I think it's still going to play pretty difficult. The main change, especially for props, is going to be 17 because you're going to see a lot more birdies out there at that hole. But outside of that, I think a pretty consistent golf course to what we got on Friday and Thursday. So in terms of our game theory edge, in terms of going out there and playing Showdown, guys, it's not going to be a weather slate. It's going to be much more about trying to find some ball strikers, right, that are hitting the ball well over the first 2 days, and then playing that game theory angle, taking a stance against some of your higher owned plays for the single round sample, as we don't have placement points in play out there for Saturday's round. So with that being said, a good little transition to bring up our spreadsheet, talk through some of our projections for today. And as per usual, right, all of the ownership is around the top end of the board. So if we're going to talk about the chalky players, the ones that really stand out would be like a Rory McIlroy. Corey Connors is getting some attention. Same thing with like a Jordan Spieth and Max Homa. Down here at -11, Akshay Bhatia is nearly 30% owned himself. Russell Henley, 24.6%. Tommy Fleetwood, I've got at 22.4%. And, I think you get the idea by now. It's all the guys that are like -2 or better. So Lucas Glover, about 18%. Guys like a Denny McCarthy, 18.2%. Brendan Todd, 16.9%. My cat's trying to steal the show here, so my apologies. But yeah, the whole way down the board, it's the guys that are playing well that are getting the attention, which sometimes is deserved, right? We'll talk about why I'm still playing a relatively chalky Lucas Glover. I'm still playing a relatively chalky Rory McIlroy today, even if he's not on here as one of our highlighted plays, because they're hitting the ball well from tee to green, right? If you're going to take a shot on somebody that you have to take in like 40% of your lineups to get leverage, then you better make them somebody that's at least hitting the ball well. So my cat, it looks like wants to get over here, so I'll put her on the other side. But that's the idea for some of our Showdown. Let's catch up on chat. Then we'll talk through tier by tier how I'm attacking this kind of slate, and I'll get on after it. Let's see. You love blackjack? Oh, I could tell. You probably double down a lot, I'd have to imagine, given your strategy, right? Double down on the soft 12. Yeah, that's what I meant, right? He's going out there. He's taking all these aggressive strategies. I double down on pretty much anything that's not a 10, for the dealer facing up. And then if I have 9 to 11, I double down almost every single time. So he probably plays blackjack like I do. What's going on, Jong? Peace, Luke. Thank you for all you do. Of course. Good morning. After you finish your content, can you tell us about the LIV environment? Do I enjoy it more or less than a PGA Tour event? So yeah, I guess I'll just say something right now. I'll add to it when we get to the LIV section. I like it more. There's less fans, right? So like undoubtedly the competitive atmosphere is less, right? There are just less fans. It's not as big of a league yet, which you'd come to expect, right? These PGA Tour stops that have tournament every single year, right, in the same area, usually the same golf course, you start to get a following, right? And you're going to have more fans. However, there is a lot more to do at a LIV golf event. There are more water stations, more bathrooms. That is not just for the players. There are more water stations and bathrooms for the fans, which as somebody that goes to PGA Tour events all the time, like 6, 7, sometimes even 10 a year, right? That's huge. That's not something that a lot of fans think about, but that is huge, right? Just the ease of access for the patrons. On top of that, I like the music, right? I'm a younger generation kid, right? I'm not as traditional as some of the older heads out there, but I like the music that they're playing. Like I listen to EDM, upscale, pop music all the time. And when I'm playing golf, I always have that music on in the background. So that does not rub me the wrong way. I like the facilities. I like the energy of the golf. The play itself, I actually enjoy. That's only like 3-4 hours, right? It's much easier to watch as a fan. You can go out there for 3-4 hours. You're not completely exhausted by the end of play. In general, the way that they have golf set up is perfect for the younger generation. It quite literally, they took all the issues that people would complain about on Twitter and fixed it. Now, you're going to get all the pushback because it's ruining the game. It's all the old heads, right? They don't like the music out there. They don't like the fact that these players are wearing jerseys, whatever the case may be. There are reasons that people won't like LIV Golf. But as a younger fan watching it in person, there's not much to complain about. That's for damn sure. You do it right with your betting on blackjack. That's the way to do it. Yeah, the double down though. Yeah, you have to be aggressive with the double downs. That's for sure. I guess I'll talk more about LIV later on, especially like when we're talking through props and stuff. But yeah, I liked it. I have to say I've liked it for a while now, especially in person. It's a pretty fun product. 6 Alive is always good for classic, absolutely. So pretty good combination there. Teeter, you took it $6,000. That's pretty awesome. Good stuff there. 98 people watching at 26 likes. Hit the like button and show some respect. Hey, you heard the man. Get that job done. If you're down here, you're watching this, you have a YouTube account, and you haven't hit the like button, what are you waiting for? You're an absolute slapdick if you haven't already. And hopefully, if you don't like it, I hope you have bad luck today. If you hit that like button, hopefully you go out there and take down the GPP. But let's talk through this strategy. So I already mentioned that I'm still playing Rory McIlroy, but in general, guys, I'm fading most of that chalk on this slate. So of the guys that we just pointed out as being some of the higher owned options, I'm fading at least 70% of them. Now, there are guys like a Rory. I already mentioned Lucas Glover, right, that I'm playing out there. But outside of those few isolated examples, guys like a Corey, right, are out of my player pool, right? Guys like Russell Henley and Akshay Bhatia, right, are players that I'm not even considering out there for round 3 showdown, as it's all about the game theory, right? We don't have a weather advantage to take advantage of. So all we have, right, is ownership, right? Trying to play the ownership game and then going out there and taking ball strikers. So that's my strategy for today, right? I'm leaning into that as much as possible, for good or bad, right? And when you're playing the game theory edge, a lot of times you may avoid some of those top end performers, but everyone's going to avoid those top end performers, right? The key is, especially when you're playing Showdown, just an 18-hole sample size, when your guys go out there and have a 4-5 under par round, you don't want to share that with 40-50% of the field, right? Now, for Sunday Showdown, when you have placement points, sometimes it's unavoidable going out there and taking the more popular players. But for round 3 showdown out here, there's not as much of an incentive, right, to taking a guy like Akshay who's starting with that big, massive lead. So he's almost an automatic fade for me out here. Same thing with like Russell Henley. Whereas somebody like a Love Gaberg, somebody like a Matt Fitzpatrick, especially, right, these lower owned pivots that we have up here towards the top, I love for a round 3 showdown. Their scoring ability is very similar to the guys around them. Guys like a Ludwig Aberg with a 42.9 point projection, 39.2 point projection here for Matt Fitzpatrick, project just as well as a lot of the other guys around them, if not slightly better than a lot of their higher owned peers. So just remember that there's no placement points, right? Don't fall into the trap of just taking all the guys at the top of the board, because first off, you're going to have all the ownership. But second off, the guys at the top have more to lose, right? Somebody like a Rory, somebody especially like an Akshay Bhatia, for example, is going to play a whole lot more conservative because of his leaderboard position than he otherwise would. And in a showdown format where we need the absolute nuts to take home the big field GPP, we don't need somebody making 2 birdies and shooting, -1, right? Or making 4 birdies and shooting something like -2. We need that 6-7 birdie round, right? We need someone like 3-4 under par to truly make a difference out there in our lineup. So that's why I think the guys at the top are even better fades, because not only, right, are you getting that game theory edge by taking guys that are the same sort of players that project the same at lower ownership, but you're also getting players that are in a better mindset to go low. So that's part of the game theory edge that I think a lot of people don't talk about, or at least don't consider when they're going out there and taking lower owned options, are especially guys like Matt Fitzpatrick, right? He's +1. He's got to make up a ton of strokes right, to go out there and get into contention. His only worry today, his only concern is going to be to make a shit ton of birdies, right? It's going to be to go out there. Even if he only shoots like even par, right? Like Matt Fitzpatrick is going to try and make birdie on every single hole. He's going to take aim at every single pin. I love that. When my intentions, my aspirations, right, line up with the player's intentions, right? When they're going out there and doing exactly what I'm hoping that they do, is something that I try and target for large field GPPs. In terms of pivots down here in the eights, Lucas Glover wouldn't be a pivot, but he is hitting the ball beautifully from tee to green. Same thing with Rory, right? That's why I'm taking him at a higher ownership number. Jordan Spieth is hitting the ball beautifully as well. He's putting well this week. He's also hitting the ball well off the tee. So if I'm going to take one of these top end players, right, I want to make sure that they're doing it in a sustainable way. A few guys up here that aren't doing it sustainably. It's not that these guys can't have a good day, but they're not hitting the ball well to this point. Colin Morikawa, who's a core play for me, so it hurts me to say this, but he has been absolute horseshit this week. He cannot hit his irons. He's lost with the irons both days. Off the tee has not been great. The putter was really shaky there yesterday. And while he had the hardest conditions, and I do think a bounce back is possible for Colin Morikawa, I wouldn't want to take him as a conviction play up top. So I prefer Matt Fitzpatrick just because he's hitting the ball a little bit better over the first 2 days. But, you know, somebody like Colin, especially if he was chalky, and he's not chalky, but if he was like 20-25% owned, he would be the easiest fade in human history just because of how he's actually hitting the golf ball. That being said, with Akshay is hitting the ball beautifully, but anytime somebody has had 2 ceiling rounds in a row, it's a kind of tough to expect them to continue that. So trust me, I'm the biggest Akshay truther there is. I bet this guy a whole lot more than everyone else. I play him every single week in DFS. He is quickly becoming one of my favorite players on all the PGA Tour, but there is no chance in rat's ass that he runs away with this event. And I'm just saying that as just being realistic out there, right? I hate to, poop on anyone's parade out there that played him like I did in DFS this week, but there's a very low chance that he goes out there and shoots someone like -3, -4 today. And if he does, tip of the cap to him, right? If we had our hat on the right way, I would give him the tip of the cap, but it's not very likely to happen. Going down a little bit further, I like Keith Mitchell. He's been really good with the ball striking to this point, getting a bunch of strokes off the tee, a bunch of strokes on approach. So a player that I'm looking at there. Down here in the 7K range, I like guys like a Nikolai Højgaard, also Adam Svensson. For a slightly lower owned play down here, you're saving some salary, right, by taking these guys in the 7K range. But because of their leaderboard position, they're both also only 3.3% owned. So you're getting a huge game theory edge, right, by taking these sort of players. And why like Højgaard and Svensson in particular are hitting their irons well, right? Particularly their long irons over the first 2 rounds have been plus players to the field and fit this golf course quite nicely. And in the case of both players, too, they're also aggressive guys that make a lot of birdies, right? Which for Showdown is exactly what I'm looking for. Down here in the 6Ks, Dylan Wu hitting his irons like he typically does. Now, he's got to get that putter working to go out there and have a ceiling round, but I love how he's hitting the ball over the first 2 days. And then the last 2 I want to point out is Lato Griffin, another absolute striper with the irons. He was, I believe, #1 in the field in iron play yesterday, and lost strokes with the flat stick. So he's $6,400. He's had a lot of success at this golf course in the past. In fact, he's had a lot of putting success around TPC San Antonio. So a player that I could see turning that around. So if you haven't caught the trend, right, I am taking a lot of really good iron players out there for round 3, and in particular, the guys that are lower owned. And Ben Coles is another player that you could throw into that bucket. He's only 0.5% owned and is another player that is gaining with his ball striking over the first 2 days. Ben Coles was one of your higher pedigree Korn Ferry Tour guys coming into the season, was one of the rookies that people thought might win Rookie of the Year, has had a really rough start. In fact, he was number 148 in the field when it came to recent form ranking, but now is finally starting to turn a corner. So we'll have to see if he can continue that for the rest of this week. But I like his chances at least a little bit more because of those ball striking stats, and in particular the approach stats that we saw out there on Friday afternoon. So $6,200, a player that I would take a chance on, but it's not so much, right? These plays we went through, right? I know we talk about these highlighted plays every time we have one of these live streams, but it's the process, right? It is why I'm taking the players that I am that I think you guys should be focusing on. If you noticed, right, the only chalky players were guys like a Lucas Glover, right, Rory, who I pointed out before, everyone else is a pivot. And if I'm building lineups, let's say I start with a Rory, maybe somebody like Lucas Glover is like my third man in, my other 4 spots are all going to be pivots, right? And if it's not a pivot up here in the 9K range, right, it's somebody like Matt Fitzpatrick, who is a pivot compared to the guys around him. So my product ownership goal is even lower out here for Showdown than what it usually is for main slate. A lot of times on the main slate, right, I want my product ownership to be 0.05 or lower in terms of a percentage. This time, I essentially want 0 chance of having duplication. So my product ownership goal is about half what it typically is when I'm going out there and building lineups. And that's easy to accomplish when I'm only playing like 1-2 chalky players. So that's my strategy for today. We'll go over any last second questions about players in particular. If not, we're going to talk about some underdog and whatnot. He's a Kentucky boy. There you go. Hey, he made the cut. So I gotta say that's a hell of a call, Mondo. You gotta let us know about the teeter call ahead of time. That's really sweet. LIV golf events are awesome. I think so too. I think a lot of people, right, are obviously going to have a negative opinion of it, just because the media, right, all the big golf heads, right, tell you that you have to hate LIV golf. People will come around to it eventually, especially the younger people. I think if you go there in person, you enjoy them in person, you'll probably change your mind if you don't like it so far. What do I think about the guys who got their ass kicked in the afternoon by the wind? You think you have 2 to win in your pool? That's it. I'm okay with it. Now, I think it's a negative, right? I get where you're coming from, right? Like they had to deal with that huge headache the entire afternoon. But like a Max Homa, for example, I wouldn't fade him just because of that, right? He was a player that played in those harder conditions. He still hit quite a few darts out there yesterday, but lost 2.5 strokes with the putter. So there are a few guys, especially if you're trying to like break a tie. One of them was AM yesterday. One of them was in the PM wave. If you need to break that tie, right, maybe you do take the AM guy, just hoping that he's a little bit better mentally, a little bit fresher than what you have with the other player. But I wouldn't make it like a reason that you're not taking guys, if that makes sense. Easiest faded human history, quote of the day. You like it? There you go. Yeah, if Batia goes out there and shoots like -7, you can clip that. That's for damn sure. It'll be an easy clip for anyone down there. Who are the 3 or 4 guys that I'm focusing on that could possibly chase down Batia? That's a really good question. So I haven't given it much thought. So let me look at the leaderboard and think it through for you, because for outright betting, I don't know if it's a really good time to go out there and take a bet. But if I was going to assume anyone's going to chase down Akshay, it could be anyone. I mean, realistically, right? If you're -2 and you shoot -4, you're probably in the top 7, top 8 by the end of the day. But like a Fleetwood or Rory, right? Those are the obvious guys that could go ahead and chase them down. I think Russell Henley's playing beautifully this week. It would not surprise me if he made a little bit of a jump up the board. I selfishly hope that Jordan Spieth does it, as a huge Spieth fan over here. So obviously he'd be at the top of my short list. But I'd say anyone down to -2 could get up there into the top 10 after round 3. And if Akshay comes back to the field, which, again, I hate to pick on the guy, but I really do think he's going to shoot over par today. If he shoots over par today, if one of these guys at -2 shoots -4, right, he could only be like 3 shots off the lead, right? Or even less, right? If things really go sideways out there for Akshay Bhatia. I don't know if I love the idea of placing outright bets, at least as of right now, right? Not knowing how Akshay is playing. But if we're like a half an hour to an hour into play and Akshay is like 1-2 over, we have somebody like Ludwig maybe starting 2-3 under par early, I might take a live bet on him, right? If it's a little bit further up, where I begin to a Max Homa territory, Jordan Spieth, guys like Fleetwood or Rory McIlroy, if you see any sort of like stumbling by Akshay, is where I would jump on one of those kind of players. So I'm not sure if you were asking because of outrights, right? Trying to find some value out there. I might wait if that is the reason that you're looking for that. But yeah, it's probably a big name guy, right? That goes out there and chases them down. Robbie Sheldon, I think you're a day late. So James, one thing I noticed about your questions is you always ask about the guys that had ceiling rounds the day before that are super low owned the day before, right? So Robbie Sheldon, for example, right? We played yesterday. We took him at 0.04% ownership. It was essentially unowned, right? He went out there and shot like -4, had a really good day. You don't want to play guys after they have that round, because first off, it's hard to back that up on the PGA Tour. And second off, if you have a ceiling round, right, you're not going to be low owned the next day, right? So Robbie Sheldon, who was literally 0% ownership, is now probably going to be 2-3% owned, right? Out there for round 3. I would stay away from that. I'm not going to give you the exact percentage, Michael. That's a part of my process, and I try not to give away my lineup building process because that's all I have at this point, right? I give away my plays, so I try to keep that to myself. Why I win Adam Scott? I think he's an okay play. He's not hitting the ball well, so that was my issue with him. Is his ball striking stats are not solid over the first 2 days, but if they were, I would love Adam Scott. And kind of like Colin Morikawa, right? I selfishly hope they turn it around because they are some of the guys I took in a bunch of lineups for main slate, but I don't know if there's evidence for that, right? I know he's -1. I know he's low owned, but the ball striking hasn't been there. Same thing with Colin Morikawa. I hope they prove me wrong. I hope they turn it around, but it might be a little bit hard. Thoughts on McNeely? He's actually hitting the ball a lot better than people would notice. I like him a lot out there for Showdown. I will say I'm playing him right there at 7.7%. And it's because he lost strokes of the short game yesterday. He lost strokes of the putter, lost strokes around the green, yet still went out there and gained with the off the tee and the approach play. That's not very typical for McNeely. And honestly, that's what we're looking for if you're going to play Maverick. How can you support the show financially? Well, there is a way that you can tip down there with a super chat, but the better way and the way that can be mutually beneficial is if you join the Patreon page, right? There's a link down there in the description. On there, you get access to all the spreadsheets that you see. So you can download them, use them for your own process, do your own research right out there for every single slate, and it goes out there and supports the channel. So I appreciate that. I'm flattered that you want to go out there and support the show out here, but the best way that's mutually beneficial is to join the Patreon. You're a boomer 50 and love everything about LIV. That is great to hear. I'm glad to hear my take on it. You're a Koepka truther and already bet him at 2,100. Yeah, I'm going to have to see how they play today before I go out there and figure out who I'm betting for Augusta. But it's worth noting that Brooks has a different putter. So if you haven't seen that yet, he's using it's almost like a mallet style putter now, which is not typical for him. And who else? DJ did not play that well. Cam Smith was all over the yard when I was watching him. Who else? I watched a little bit of Joaquin Neiman. He wasn't that sharp out there yesterday. So I was hoping to follow somebody and really see good play and try and bet them for an outright. And I didn't get that for Friday. It was a lot of guys that were kind of shaky out there. But Brooks, even with just like some average shots, really nothing crazy going on, almost ended up going out there and shooting like -5. So that was pretty sweet. Blake says Aaron Rye. Let's take a look at the stats. I have to say he's not really popping in anything that I was running last night. So I'm assuming that the stats aren't all that impressive. But let's double check on it, right? Maybe it's just something that I overlooked. That's always a possibility. But Aaron Rye is what, like even par at this point, +1 over the first 2 days. Yeah, he lost strokes with everything but the putter yesterday. So I would stay clear from Aaron Rye, right? He's typically a really poor putter and does extremely well with the shots gained tee to green. And yesterday could not be any more opposite. So yeah, I would stay away from Aaron Rye. That's why I'm not playing him. Don't you give you any false hope on your cooked Ludwig bets? Yeah, if you bet Ludwig this week, right, you got a lot of room to make up. But I've seen crazier shit happen, Kay. If he goes out there and he starts like -3 through 4 or 5 holes, and he might pull a Jordan Spieth, right, and go from +4 to up there in the top 10. I've seen some crazy shit happen. Interested to see the outcome of the group with Spieth and Olesen. You know I love Spieth, but the last time they played together was a Ryder Cup, and Olesen beat him up pretty good. Yeah, maybe there is a revenge factor, but honestly, I would be mind blown if Jordan Spieth even remembers that. If even knows that happened at this point because it was so long ago. My cat's trying to get in the frame again, so I guess hello. You can say hi to the cat there. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I doubt it, though. I doubt that he's really considering that, but you never know. FanDuel has Lucas Glover under 72.5 for the third round. You got to tell me the odds. You got to let me know the juice on that one, and I'll let you know. Quick look at Seabez. You like him as a lower-owned option for a comeback. I think he is going to be lower-owned, so you're going to get your wish there. But let me take a look at the shots gained. So, yeah, losing on approach, that was at least round 2. Let me take a look at the round 1 stuff. So in round 1, he also lost on approach. I don't love it, right? Because the ball striking stats haven't been there, but also, you know, kind of like I mentioned with Colin Morikawa and whatnot, it's not impossible for these guys to turn it around. So if you're going to take a shot on a Morikawa and Aaron Rye, somebody like a Seabez, just know what you're getting into, right? You're playing somebody that is not playing well. In fact, is playing horribly for their standards over the first few days, but just hoping that they turn it around. If you're okay with that risk, then by all means, go out there and play them. But if not, then don't play them. Dylan Wu or Dylan Thompson, or let's say Davis Thompson, as I'm assuming you're saying, for the last man in. You feel like Thompson, but it's better for Showdown. So if you have the salary, right, I would probably go Davis Thompson. Now, the added caveat is that Davis Thompson's going to be higher owned, right? Davis Thompson, I have, I'll just double check for you, give you the exact numbers here. And I've got Davis Thompson at 6.8%, and I have Dylan Wu at 0.8%, right? So that's a massive difference, right? That's a whole 6% difference when it comes to the ownership. If you need an ownership pivot, let's say that you're taking some chalk at some of your other spots, then take Dylan Wu, right? But if you already pivoted on a few of the other spots, you could probably take Davis Thompson. John says minus 120 for the Lucas Glover prop. I'm pretty good with that. Yeah, the ball striking is what I like, right? Whenever I'm going out there and taking props, I want guys that are hitting the ball well over the first 2 days. And Lucas Glover definitely checks that box. So just looking at the event stats to give you an idea of why I'm so bullish on Lucas Glover, he's gaining 2 strokes on approach per round, nearly a stroke per round off the tee, 0.75 shots per round around the green, and then losing 1.7 with the putter, right? And that has led him to the top 20, right? He's -2 over the first 2 rounds. I'm cool with that. Yeah, I think it's a pretty solid bet. Connors or Homa in a head-to-head pick. I would lean Homa, but a lot of that depends on odds, right? I'm assuming that Homa's probably favored out there in that matchup. So you're going to have to let me know the juice in either direction. If Connors was the underdog, right? And let's say that he was like plus 120 or something like that, and there's the void for the tie, I'd probably take Corey Connors because of the course history. But at the same time, Max Homa is a better player, right? So if we're getting plus money on Max Homa, I would take that. So that depends on the odds. That's a close one, David. And I could see an argument for both sides. So that's why I need that. Let me go ahead, bring up DraftKings. We'll talk through some lineup construction. Then afterwards, talk through props. So if you have any DFS stuff, now is the time to get all of those questions in, because here in about 5 minutes, we're going to transition to the prop side. And in terms of talking through lineup construction, as long as you're not taking a bunch of chalk, which I'm not, right? I'm only playing, I think, 2, maybe 3 guys that are coming in with some ownership. Then I don't have to worry about my lineup construction at all. So if I'm going out there and starting with like an Aberg, let's say in this kind of lineup, maybe my second man in will be somebody like I don't know, a lower owned Mav McNeely, right? At $8,100. We get through Lucas Glover into that lineup if we wanted to. Down here in the 7K range, I don't hate the idea of taking like Højgaard in this lineup. Up here in the 9s, we can take one more expensive player. We'll throw in a Matty Fitz, right? $9,100. If we're building a lineup and it's all pivots like this and the one chalky guy, right, like a Lucas Glover, this lineup is going to have plenty of differentiation, and we're not going to have to worry about ownership at all. And in fact, even if we threw like a Rory in here, now we're probably going to have to spend down because of the salary, right? It's not going to work with taking these kind of players. But even if we took a Rory and a Lucas Glover together, which I'll have in some of my builds, and let's say we want to throw in like one more chalky guy. So for some reason, you have to play Denny McCarthy today, right? Like you're a Denny McCarthy stan. You're just not fading him for some reason. Even if you wanted McCarthy and you were taking him with Glover and Rory, who are all pretty chalky players, a low-owned McNeely, right? A super low-owned Højgaard, and then you throw in somebody here at $6,700. That's another pivot. So let's say like an SH Kim, who's like sub 2% owned. If you entered this lineup with SH Kim here, you'd be totally fine for the large field GPP. And I think a lot of people overdo it when they're going out there and getting different, right? They'll take like 4 or 5 pivots out there in their lineup. 3 is enough, right? McNeely, Højgaard, and then, SH Kim, if he was the last guy that you chose, would end up being enough to get you different here. So I go through this to show you guys that it's not rocket science when you're going out there and building your lineups. And to give you an idea of that product ownership, right? You can go out there and calculate that. You're going to have next to no chance to duplicate yourself in the large field GPP. So especially if you're not entering like the big $15, big $20, right, that they do for these showdown slates. If you're entering a single entry or something that's, only a couple thousand entries, that kind of lineup is almost overly different, right? It's almost like overly leveraged to the field. And every time I run these free contests, right, where we go through and I can like go through your lineups, right, give you guys some feedback on how you're building, the main thing that I used to see, and I used to do these live streams every single week, right, where I'd go through and I would critique lineups for an hour. And honestly, I'm kind of missing that. Maybe we'll get back to that some point here in 2024. But the thing that I noticed the most were people that would hear don't play the chalk, right? That would hear be different, go out there and leverage to the field, and to play 6 pivots. It would be literally 6 guys that are all sub 5% owned. and they'd have like a 1 of 6 making the cut and go like, what went wrong, right? Well, you played a bunch of shitty golfers, right? That's what ended up going wrong. So don't feel like when you hear people like myself, and I'm guilty of it too, right? Only saying play game theory, play pivots, so on and so forth. It does not mean at all 6 spots. And I know I give this same warning every time we do this, but it's true. And I see it every time I look over lineups. People just going crazy with that. Do I have tickets to the Masters? You have Tuesday practice round tickets. I don't, David. If I did, I would definitely be heading up, but I don't. David says, how do I feel about taking Aberg plus 110 over Rory? He tees off 2 hours before Rory and will have much less wind to deal with. I would normally agree with you, but the wind forecast doesn't say that, right? So if we take a look at the forecast for Saturday, they're actually calling for higher winds earlier than what you have later on. So depending on the odds for Rory, I would probably take the other side of that. But I think that you're thinking the right way, right? Obviously, most slates, right, the wind does kick up as the day goes on. But at least per this HRRR forecast out here for today, they're not calling for that to happen. So I might stay away from that one. I probably wouldn't bet Rory because the odds aren't great, I'm imagining. But I certainly probably would stay away from the Aberg side because wind conditions don't look like they're going to be helping him. So, all right, that's it for the DFS lineup construction. In terms of cash, and you're an absolute sicko if you play cash for Showdown. That's what I have to say there. But hey, if that's your thing, if that's your kink, then by all means, go out there and do it. I would be playing Corey Connors in cash today. It's the price tag, it's the course history, it's everything. It's the ball striking that you're getting from Corey Connors. I would stay away from Batia. I know he's hitting the ball well. It's just, it feels like we have train wreck day all over it, right, out there with Akshay. So I'd probably stay away from him. I don't hate the idea of playing Harman. Harman's usually a really good cash play. I would normally say Aaron Rye. He's one of my favorite cash plays, regardless of tournament. But because of how he's hitting the ball, I wouldn't go there myself. It just seems a little bit risky over the first 2 days. Who else? I don't love cash. You can't tell I don't play it very often. And it's for good reason. Again, it's for sickos. But you could throw an Adam Svensson in there, $7,300. And let's find one more cash lock. This is such a... there's no one up here, right? So even these 9K guys, these 9, 10K guys that you feel great about playing, right? Like Jordan Spieth is Jordan Spieth. He's volatile. He's hard to ever want to play in cash. Max Homa's coming in off a really shitty day. Hideki's got the back issues, right? Ludwig Aberg is a loose cannon, right? You don't want to play him in. Rory's 12K, right? So playing him in cash is like a no-go, right? It completely tanks your average salary. I mean, like, Fitz, I guess Tommy Fleetwood, right, would probably be the best cash play up there in the 9K range. This would be how I'm starting most of my cash lineups. But as you can tell, I'm not playing cash for today. And honestly, this is probably my least favorite cash slate that I may have ever seen. A lot of that's because of the guys up top. I really don't feel great about any of them out there for the 50-50 format. But if there's anyone I'm going to trust, it's a multiple-time champion here. And I guess it's a cheap Tommy Fleetwood that's hitting the ball well. So those would be some of the guys that I would start with over there on that side. But once again, probably not my favorite slate when it comes to cash. So let's see if there's any last second questions about DFS. If not, let's talk some props. Looks like we're good on questions. So let's go through some of our prop stuff. So what I'm going to do here is bring up, I have a bunch of analysis that I did for round 2 at PGA, also for the first round over there at LIV. So let me go ahead and bring that up so that we can look at that together. So just one moment while I find that file. So it was from last night. Is it that one? Yeah, there it is. It's that one right there. So let's get that up and share our screen for you guys. So on here, I have all the averages from yesterday, also some of my projections in terms of what I'm expecting to see for the field. So for the round 2 averages at the top, this is all PGA stuff. I have the total averages up here, but then afterwards, right, I have it broken down by AM and PM wave. So because it played so much differently right out there from the morning to the afternoon, I wanted to show you guys what it looked like under both set of circumstances. So you can see, right, we got the scoring average up there, 1.2 over par, right? The birdie average, 2.86, et cetera, et cetera. The thing I want to focus on here are the morning versus afternoon stuff. So when it played super windy, right, there was only 2.5 birdies per round. There were still 3 birdies per round being made earlier in the day. And then your bogey average, it was still pretty high early, right? It was still 3.26. That's why it played over par there in the morning wave. But your bogey average went over 4 per round, right? The later in the day that we got. So it's a difficult track. We knew that, right, heading into this week. but it got especially difficult towards the PM wave. So if we're expecting pretty gnarly conditions, I do think that these tee boxes, these pin locations are going to help players out a little bit out there for Saturday. These scoring averages, though, from the afternoon are probably going to be a little bit more accurate than what we saw in the morning. So if you're going to look at anything for Saturday's action, my cat's trying to get across again. Oh my God. There's the big unit of a cat again. She insists on being on the camera, I guess, today. She wants to cross the other side, so we'll put you on the other side. But as you guys can see here, right, I think these PM averages are probably a little bit more accurate. So in terms of projections for the field, I have the scoring average between a quarter of a stroke over par and 1 stroke over. So something between like 72.25 and 73 strokes. I have the birdie average between 3 and 3.5, which is actually maybe even a little bit better than what we saw for yesterday morning. A lot of that because of them likely moving up hole number 17. Also because of the easy pin locations on hole number, 14? That's one of the easier pins that we can get this golf course, and also an easy pin at hole number 2, another one of the par 5s. I do think you're going to see a little bit more scoring, as we typically do see on moving day. But the bogey average, right, just hopping back over to this, I don't have moving very much, right? I have the bogey or worse average between 3.3 and a whole 3.75 per round, which is why I still have it playing slightly over par. Their green and reg average between 10 to 10.5 for the field. And then your fairway average, I have projected between 6.5 to 7 per round. So with that being said, what are a few props that I like? And the two that I want to go through together over here in Underdog are going to be an over on Akshay Bhatia bogeys and an over on Max Homa birdies. So I know we already had to talk about Akshay, and I hate to pick on him. Again, he's literally one of my favorite players. So don't take this as I'm like hating on you, Akshay. If you happen to see this, right, don't take it the wrong way. I still love you. Still one of my favorite players out there. But when you're playing with like a 5-shot lead, crazy shit happens, right? I mean, you're sleeping on the lead for 2 straight days. There's a lot of nerves that come in. And if I think the bogey average, right, is going to be like 3.3 to sometimes even closer to like 4 bogeys per round, Akshay could have an average day and still go over this line, right? He could actually still have a slightly better than average day and still go over this kind of projection, which is why I'm taking that over. So it's a lot because of the nerves, right? It's because he's played so well. And it's a crazy thing to say, right? A guy plays so well that you're looking to fade him out there for the 3rd round. But that's the truth, right? That's the sport that we're playing. It's golf. It's a sport where the mental game really comes into play. No, do you really have to keep trying to get into the camera? Well, that's the sport we play, right? When you go out there, you have those really good rounds. It's really tough to back it up. So I'm taking an over on Akshay right there. And then this Max Homa prop, right? Again, I don't think the average is going to be too crazy with birdies. So it's not like this is like a lock. It's not like this is like the biggest piece of value in human history. But if I think the birdie average is going to be between 3 to 3.5, a lot of it because of the pin locations. If you have Max Homa projected at the potential field average, that's a mistake, right? He's an elite tier birdie maker in this field. Yesterday, he only made 2 birdies, but he did have 4 putts of less than 10 feet that he missed for birdie. So it's not like he didn't have opportunities to go out there and make them. He had a few really easy opportunities on par 5s where he could have just gone up and down for a birdie and ended up hitting his chip shot to like 15 to 20 feet. So he had a lot of real close calls out there for Friday. And now that he has similar conditions, right, I don't love that, right? It's the same kind of conditions that he's playing in. But even in those conditions, right, he was still generating a lot of looks at birdie. So that's why I took the over on Max Homa. He is over there at 4 on Prize Picks. So if you're looking for a little bit of line value, you do have like a 0.5 discrepancy that you can work with there. And then this Akshay prop, I guess I'll just show you this. Go over here to DraftKings. Akshay's at 72.5 strokes, right? So he's way up there. So let's say you don't want to take his bogey line. I guess I understand that. He's at 72.5, right? 0.5 over par in minus 130 towards the over. So if you wanted to go over here and perhaps take his over at 71 strokes instead, you could easily do that too. So I took his bogey line. You could go over here, take the strokes. I would understand that. That is a 1.5 discrepancy compared to where they have them on the books. And you have that juice in your favor there. So just to compare to Prize Picks, I believe, yeah, they have them up at 72 strokes. So that would be a stroke advantage compared to that site. But those are the 2 props that I'm taking over there on Underdog. In terms of Prize Picks, there's not a lot I like. In fact, these birdie lines, I think, are a little bit more accurate than what they have over there in Underdog. But like having guys at 4 birdies, I think makes sense, especially with them moving up 17. And these guys at 3.5, they probably make a lot of sense there as well. So I don't love the birdie board. They don't have fairways or greens posted out here for round 3, which is a little bit of a shame. And then from the strokes angle, I don't love strokes for today, right? Like I think there's going to be a lot of birdies and a lot of bogeys that are being made, which is going to make strokes a little bit more volatile than what I want to get to. So on Prize Picks as of right now, I haven't entered anything, and I'll probably enter something before we get to lock. Our one slip that we entered over there in Prize Picks yesterday did end up hitting. It was an under on Hideki and an under on Tommy Fleetwood for strokes, but I try not to force in exposure unless I see quite a bit of value out there. So for the PGA side, at least on Prize Picks, it's looking a little bit bare. But Underdog, I think there's quite a bit of value that we could take over here on this side. And of course, guys, we have a whole other tournament to work with over here with LIV. So let's see if there's any PGA prop questions. If not, we're going to hop over to LIV and talk about how I'm attacking that board. No law says you have to use most or all of your salary. That is true. I would say that there is something wrong with leaving too much money on the table. I think that if you're leaving, $10,000 on the table, you're probably doing too much because there's no point to it, right? If you leave $400 on the table, you're already different than 99% of the other lineups out there. And if you leave 500 to just 1,000 on the table, you're different than literally everyone else, right? The last time I saw a study on this, it was about a year ago. They were looking at how much salary people use for your average PGA DFS event. It was $49,600 or above was 99.4% of lineups, right? So that means that 0.6% of lineups, just 0.6%, were using less than within $400 of the max, right? So that we're leaving $500 or more on the table. That was less than 1%. And if you put that out to $1,000, so they did the study just based on leaving more than 1,000 on the table, I think it was 0.001%. So there is no law that says you have to spend all your salary. That's for sure. But I would say, what are you getting about leaving, $4,000 on the table? What are you getting by leaving $10,000 on the table? You're not getting extra differentiation. You're just not, right? So if there are guys that you have projected higher, right, that you can spend that extra $3,000-$4,000, you should probably do it. So I think there's an event or two on tour, especially like the match plays, where I could see leaving a little bit more salary on the table. I just couldn't see it for Showdown, not this type of slate. Thank you, Mondo. I appreciate that. You are on top of your game. Best golf program. Appreciate the kind words there. Best of luck out there for today. And you can leave some salary on the table, Mondo, but let's not leave 10 grand, right? Thanks for all your help in DFS. You've seen good results listening to the past 7 weeks or so. Love to hear that, Michael. Welcome to the live stream. I think it's the first time we've seen you here, so welcome into that. You just got lucky this time, you suppose. Yeah, I mean, if we look at the optimal lineups, Mondo, like end of the week, we look at the guys that have the best success, right? If you just look at the pure best lineup available, a lot of times people will post that over there on Twitter and stuff. Sometimes it is only spending like 40 grand, right? But if you take a look at who actually wins the big GPPs, it's never somebody that's only spending $40,000. What that tells me, right, is that you don't need the absolute nuts to take home these large field GPPs, and that in practicality, even if you do build lineups that are leaving all that salary on the table, you're going to have the same sort of chance, right, to hit that optimal lineup as compared to everyone else. So we could talk about it more, especially like main slates going forward. But yeah, it's not my favorite strategy. If I'm going to keep it completely real with you, it feels like you're leaving too much talent on the table if you're going out there and leaving that much salary. Let's talk about some of our stuff over here for LIV now. So we'll circle back on some PGA stuff if you guys have questions. But weather out here for Saturday looks almost identical out there to Friday. So they're not calling for very much wind in the forecast. I got to tell you, as a South Floridian, though, that there's a really good chance that the wind is higher than what they're calling for. And if we take a look at the stuff from Friday, right, yesterday's live stream, it is the exact same kind of scenario. So I don't think you're going to see a huge difference when it comes to the weather conditions. So when we're looking at some of the averages here, I think they'll be pretty accurate and pretty helpful right out there for Saturday. So stroke average was slightly over par. It was a 72.22. Your birdie or better average was about 3.5 per round. So you can see down here at the bottom, my projections for round 2 are almost the same, right? It's a even par scoring average is what I'm calling for. And then the birdie average, I have it pretty much the same exact number. So 3.5 per round and not much changing right there, which as of right now, and I haven't even entered this fade over here for LIV Golf,
I don't see a lot of value, right? Like they have a lot of your average players at 3.5, and it's a lot of your older players that I don't trust for taking an over, so I'd probably stay away there. These guys at 4 birdies, I think you could lean on their over, but again, if they were at 3.5, they'd be good plays. At 4, I think they're just average at best, if not negative plays, because of that push equity. And then for strokes, I do think there's some overs that we could take for strokes, but they don't have enough of the bottom tier guys, right? Like it's all these top tier guys that are all like -2, which I tend to agree with. But if we had more guys like Carlos Ortiz, more guys that are, some of those mid to lower tier players, I'd probably be looking to take a few fades out there. So I got to say, I'm going to be there at the LIV Golf event. I want to have some sort of sweat to work with, but I don't like this board at all. And I'm not the type of guy to just play shit to play shit. I'm not just going to go full degen and enter lineups just because I want to have a sweat. I know there's probably people out there that want to do that. That's probably how they bet, but that's not how somebody like myself that does this seriously, that tries to go out there and make money off of my bets is going to play this kind of slate. So my cat's again trying to steal the show. Come on, let's stop being annoying as fuck out here now. I let you stay in the room with me while I'm streaming, and now you're making me second guess that, cat. But again, like I was saying, I'm not going to force in bets just because I want to go out there and get exposure. So we might not have anything over here for LIV. Maybe if I can think about it for a few minutes, we'll find something, but I'm not sure about it. If I'm placing a bet on somebody to win, who am I placing that bet on? Is it Tommy Fleetwood? Well, if I was going to place a bet, it would have to be on a Hard Rock Bet. So let's take a look at Hard Rock Bet real quick. And if I was going to place a bet, what do they have? I guess it's for PGA that you're looking for, obviously. So not LIV Golf. They have Fleetwood at 20-1. They have Spieth at like 25-1. I don't know if I would place a bet on Fleetwood at 20-1. Like the odds just don't feel good enough, right, for him having to make up all of those strokes. I was mentioning this a little bit earlier, so you probably didn't see it when we were talking about it, but I would wait to live bet. I would wait to see how Akshay plays. If he comes back to the field, I think you're going to find quite a few good numbers to take. If somebody like Aberg starts like 4 or 5 under par through his first 4 or 5 holes, then maybe you consider that. But as of right now, I don't see a lot of value. Do I think that Lucas Glover beats Denny McCarthy? Thank you, of course, for the content. Well, appreciate that. Thank you, Tyler. And it would depend on the odds, but yeah, I do think that's a decent lean. Now, if we're going to take a look at why, Denny McCarthy to this point has been pretty solid across the board, but he's gaining a bunch of strokes around the green. Whereas we go down here to Lucas Glover, right, who's only -2, he's doing it with the tee to green play, right? Still gaining a little bit around the green, but not carrying himself with that short game. So yeah, it depends on the odds, but if you're getting like even money odds out there on Lucas Glover, I'd probably be good with it right now. If he's like -130 or something like that, I probably stay away. So yeah, I would lean the Lucas Glover side, but a lot of that depends on the kind of odds that you're getting. In terms of LIV Golf stuff, God, I want to do something for today. See, this is the shitty part, right? I like this Carlos Ortiz over. So maybe that is the one prop I'm going to take. It's just finding some sort of pairing over there on Prize Picks. So let's take a look at the PGA side. If we were to find a pairing, we can get a 3x payout because we are mixing the two sports. Let's see what we can find. So I don't hate fades. Like Webb Simpson over. Honestly, out of everything that I'm seeing here, this is probably the best prop. Okay, let's see what we got in terms of odds. So I don't know if they have them posted over here on DraftKings. Yeah, they do, right? They got him at 73.5. Now he's juiced way under, right? So obviously has that direction going for him, but he's an entire stroke and a half higher. Oh, so if I was going to enter anything right now, I'm not sure if I'm actually going to end up sending this by the time we get off live stream here. But this Webb over, I do happen to like quite a bit. And then this Carlos Ortiz over is the only one I'm a little bit sketchy on. The Webb over, I for sure want to take. I feel pretty good about that one. If they make these pin locations easy for LIV, I'm just going to tilt my dick off if I go out here and take these fades. So this is the issue with LIV Golf, right? You know, I mentioned a few of the things I like, right, about the actual viewing experience. Things I don't like, no shot tracker. That is absolute shit. Second thing I don't like is we don't get the pin locations, tee boxes beforehand. So it's kind of hard to handicap it from the prop perspective, right, without having that information. But Carlos Ortiz, I know he had good form coming in, but he did not look good yesterday. I can tell you that from firsthand knowledge and just looking at the scores. Did not have his best stuff. Matthew Wolff is an extremely volatile player. I know he had a good round yesterday, but with all that water out there, I wouldn't be surprised if he had a few water balls. Bubba Watson, right? I know that he looked good as well, but he's up there in age. Ian Poulter, you know what? It might be Ian Poulter that we take here. God, this is gonna backfire badly. All right, so guys, Ian Poulter, I don't know what's going on with him, but I watched him hit 3 drives yesterday, and right before he drives it, and this is the only reason I'm going to fade him. So this is why I'm like, oh God, why do I even mention this? Right before he drives, he lines up to his ball. He does all his waggles. He was backing off quite a bit, which is never great to see out there from a golfer. It takes longer. It's just a bad look in general when somebody's that nervous over the golf ball. But Ian Poulter, before he hits his driver, takes like a massive gulp of air. So he's sitting over his driver. He's like getting ready, and he goes like he's taking a bong rip or something, right? He's sitting there. He's taking a massive fucking breathe in, like he's ripping the bong or something, and then takes his backswing and hits it. I don't know why he's doing that. He looks silly. He looks like kind of a freak when he's out there. He's like taking that huge, massive breath of air. And it makes me feel like he's not very comfortable with the driver. Like something's going on where like he has to calm himself down with a massive breath of air before he goes out there and hits the shot. So at a course with all that water in play, I don't hate fading Ian Poulter. And again, maybe it's a silly reason for why I want to fade him out there, but it's true, right? It's a golf course that could eat him alive if he gets a little bit offline off the tee. And it's not a good scene. It's not a good thing to see when somebody's out there freaking gulping down air before they're hitting bets. Gooch strokes under and Rahm birdies over are your favorites. I was considering the Rahm under for strokes. So yesterday, right, Rahm made a double bogey on a par 5, got it like 3-4 under par. Over for birdies is probably a solid lean too, but I kind of doubt that he's going to make all those bogeys again, right? Like it feels like he's going to have a much cleaner round. So yeah, I don't hate that one at all, especially for LIV. And honestly, hearing that you like that makes me a little bit more willing to take something like a Jon Rahm. So yeah, I don't hate that. Then you took it was Gooch, right? Gooch strokes that you were talking about. I got to see a lot of his round because he was playing with Cam Smith, and I was following Cam Smith, one of my favorite players out there on the LIV Tour, and he made an eagle on hole number 8. It was that was pretty sweet to see. Also, I saw Jon Rahm hole out for an eagle yesterday. I didn't get to see a ton of really good shots. The course is pretty spread out. I got to say, the Blue Monster itself is not the best course to have one of these events at, but yeah, I got to see Jon Rahm. He dunked it over there on hole number 8. So he had a little chip shot. He chipped it up there directly into the hole. It did not bounce once, went directly into the pin. That didn't suck. And I like those plays. I like that. Poulter blowing smoke. Yeah, literally. Dude, when I saw him do that, I looked to the guy next to me. I didn't know him or anything. I just like looked down because he had this like funny look on his face. I'm like, is he like taking a bong rip, like ripping a doobie before he's going out there and like hitting the golf ball? Like, what the fuck's going on here? So, yeah, these would be the two main props that I'm looking at for LIV right now. Over here in Underdog, let's see. They have the same projections, right? So, yeah, Taylor Gooch, they have at 70.5. What do they have Jon Rahm at? They have Jon Rahm at 4.5 birdies as well. If you added this over here, and if you went over and did that, let's see. If you added like Taylor Gooch to that, you get nearly a 10x payout out there for that 4x card. So, what I like about mixing these sports, and probably something that I'll have to tinker around with when I'm going out here and building my slips before lock, are taking a look at adding PGA plus LIV stuff, right? Because over here, right, a 6.24x payout is really nice out here for this like 3-leg slip. Then over here in Prize Picks, right, normally 2 fades would be only 2.5x. You get 3x for combining these two players. So that's why I like having these weeks with PGA and LIV to work with. A little bit more work for me because I had to go through all these different projections. I had to go through extra win shit, all that. I mean, it's a good privilege to have, right? It's golf. I don't mind going over it whatsoever. But the huge benefit of having all of that is to have more options to choose from the prop side. So that's all I'm going to have for this live stream, guys. I think I've talked through everything that I want to here. In terms of pin locations, I know I mentioned that go through those before. The main ones that I think are going to have an impact, if you're just joining us, I mentioned this towards the beginning of the live stream. 17 is going to lead to a lot more birdies on PGA. 14 is going to lead to a lot more birdies for PGA, and same thing with hole number 2. So it's why I'm still willing to take somebody like a Max Homa for an over on birdies, even with some tough wind conditions expected, right? And even with those easier holes, I would still take an over on strokes or an over on bogeys, right? For somebody like Akshay Bhatia because of all the harder holes, right? So I mentioned a few of the easier ones. The harder pin locations would be like a hole 4. That's a really tough hole to begin with. Hole 5 is a tough pin. 8 is going to be a little bit harder to make a birdie on because it's there on the back shelf, and that's a par 5. Hole 7 is tucked over a bunker. Hole 11 is a little bit tough. Hole 12 is a back left pin location. It's a good set of moving day pins. So that's what I'll leave you guys with. That is all I've got for this Saturday stream. Go ahead, smash the like button on the way out of here, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content to come. We're doing another stream for round 4, so keep an eye out for that. And hopefully we can have ourselves a day out here for moving day. Appreciate it again. Appreciate the support here, guys. And best of luck with all of your exposure. We'll have some LIV golf today, obviously some PGA to cover. So if you're looking for all my slips, check out the Patreon. I'll be posting them there, as well as for all the spreadsheets that you saw throughout the video. Catch you guys for tomorrow, and